So here we're looking at a metric micrometer. So each of these tick marks or hash marks is a millimeter. So this would be 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters, 15 millimeters. And so each gap is a millimeter. Now we can divide these gaps into two, into these little tiny space here and say a little tiny space here. The little space here, that's going to be 0.5 millimeter. And then finally, on the bevel or on the thimble, between these tick marks, we have 1/100th of a millimeter. So to read this, what we're going to do is let's look at the millimeters on the top of the sleeve first. So we're at 15, 16, 17. And we look at the number of millimeters between, well, up until we get to the thimble. So first off, we have 17 times 1 millimeter, or 17 millimeters. Now, for 2. For 2, we're going to count the number of little tick marks below on the sleeve, all along here. And if we see one, that means we're going to multiply 0.5 millimeters by 1. So if we had like a little tick mark here, we would go 1 times 0.5 millimeters. But in this example, we don't have 1. So we're going to have 0. So for these little tick marks, you're going to either have 1 showing up or 0 showing up. And what we're looking for is the number of these little tick marks between the last upper tick mark and the beginning of the thimble. And we have none. Now we could have 1, or we could have none. So between the last millimeter mark and the thimble, how many of these tick marks below do we see? In this case, we see 0. So you have 0 millimeters. For our last reading, we're going to take a look where on the thimble, we have a tick mark lining up with the horizontal line on the sleeve. And this tick mark is 28. So 28, 29, 30. And so the gap here between these tick marks is 1/100th of a millimeter. So you have 28 times 100th of a millimeter, or 28 hundredths of a millimeter. So for our last step, we add these together. 17 millimeters plus 0 millimeters plus 28 hundredths of a millimeter, and we get 17 and 28 hundredths of a millimeter. And that's it. If you have any questions, let me know.